What are we gonna have to talk about?
We're gonna have to talk about that washing machine sound in the background of you. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, and welcome to IO Radio with your host Adam Smith and Sal Bayat.
Hi, everybody.
Uh, the tick 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 in the background. I like that.
So just so you know, everyone, my laundry machine is on the fritz, and it's right by my office, and so it's making some interesting sounds here.
You should have some more cut, like it's a doomsday clock for some or something, counting down tick 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 in the background.
Yeah, absolutely. That's exactly what it is. It's counting down the time when crypto will be banned.
So, we don't really have a specific topic. We're going to try to let this thing manifest. Got some ideas. We haven't done a little show in a while, and I thought let's talk about some stuff, especially since there are some things going on. I guess we could start with that, which is obviously we did a show about Reddit censoring us, and then Reddit has started to implode shortly after that because of their API changes and all of that. And it's really created a very, very interesting situation in the social media community with all the moderators kind of rebelling against corporate and their new policies. And this is manifested into a huge, wide variety of different things. And just since the last time we've done our episode, a lot has changed.
Well, I think it goes to show that people are becoming more skeptical of providing free labor because those moderators provide a lot of
Yes.
free labor. I was looking at the stuff that the AMA people do in terms of coordinating with celebrities and agents and all of this extra work, and it all goes to add value to Reddit. Reddit is able to charge more for ads because of all this work. And in the end, the interests of the users and those moderators and everyone that's using the platform aren't really represented.
Yeah. I mean, it's funny because I assume that the owners of Reddit just thought, oh, they're just deleting spam and not doing a whole lot. We can eventually get AI to replace them. Screw those people and their little whiny complaints about stuff. And what you're finding is that in each and every community, there's different groups of volunteers that are doing, in many cases, some very specialized jobs. For example, take something as simple as the canning subreddit, which is about, canning foods and vegetables and fruits and stuff like that. Well, the moderators there are a carefully crafted team of people that are experts, not just in canning, but also in food safety. And they took it upon themselves to make sure that anybody that was posting anything in the canning subreddit was not saying anything that would be potentially dangerous, because obviously if you're canning food, there's a possibility of introducing toxins and botulism and bacteria. So they didn't want their community to be promoting any kind of information that could cause people to get sick. And that's a very specialized kind of thing. Same thing with like a subreddit that might be dedicated to like identifying reptiles and snakes and stuff. These people take their responsibility very seriously. They don't want people saying, "Oh, that's a non-venomous snake," when it actually is, and get people hurt. And I think the Reddit admins had no idea how much lots of little specialized experts that they couldn't pay for, were donating their time to make these communities not just active, but helpful and safe.
I mean, I think there's this trend in the business community to think about these networks are valuable, and what we're going to do is we're going to build a wall around them, and then we'll have our walled garden and we'll extract as much value as possible. And you see this with, Elon Musk, who thought, I'll come in and I'll make Twitter profitable. It'll be easy. No problem, guys.
Yeah, it's just a general disregard for the value of consumers and users.
Well, I think it's getting things backwards, because the networks aren't just valuable. The networks need to be useful. If the network is useful and people use it and they derive utility from the network, then the network will be valuable. But if you start eroding that utility, whether it's the case of Twitter and only being able to view, what is it, 600 posts,
Hmm.
or if it's Reddit and reducing the utility because now people can't use apps that are better than the native Reddit mobile client. This erodes the utility. People start to leave the platform, and network effects can be positive or negative. They can be positive in terms of more people join the network, so then it's more useful, so then more people join the network, and so on and so on. But it can also go in the other direction, where the key users start leaving the network,
Right.
and then it starts to erode the utility, and then everyone starts to leave. It's not a mass exodus to start, it's a slow trickle, but it builds and builds and builds.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of interesting analytical stuff that you can kind of derive from looking. The social media industry is a completely new and interesting industry, as is the whole client server situation, like chat rooms and message boards and groups and stuff like that.
You mean it's a new industry in the sense that blockchain is a new technology?
Uh, no, well,
It's been around for 20 years now.
it has been around, yes, but what I'm talking about is it's new in terms of a business model, right? Traditional business models are like product-oriented businesses and service-oriented businesses. In a product-oriented business, you're creating a product, and the objective there is to have the lowest bill of materials. Your cost to produce that product as low as possible, so you have a nice profit margin. And depending upon the nature of the product, you can scale it up and make a lot of money. Service-oriented businesses, it's your service. It's tied completely to you, how much time you have, right? Social media is one of these hybrid businesses where the business model is you creating a framework which is then filled in by your own customers. So it's a unique business model that has different rules, right? You know, obviously if you are creating a product, as long as people like it or it's affordable, it will sell. Especially if they need it, they don't even have to like you. They don't have to believe in you, as long as you provide something useful. But social media, it's a little bit more complicated.
Well, I guess it's that content creation. That's what you're talking about. That's the key difference. I mean, you can have a magazine network. You can have it be nationally distributed. You have 10 million subscribers, and they're subscribing because they like the product.
Right.
But ultimately,
but they're not contributing to it. They're just reading it.
In a sense they are, right? Because you do have this, it is a bit of a network. Like, it's one of these pre-digital networks in a way, because you do have users writing in letters, and occasionally, the magazine,
right?
Playboy,
but that's not a core part of the business model, though.
It's not, but it's sort of a well, that's a good question. I don't know if there were magazines that were largely subscriber driven in terms of content. I have no idea, but that's essentially what these social media
obviously
are.
If one of these platforms gets a certain critical mass, then they have real power. You look at Facebook, or you look at eBay as a good example too, because eBay is basically a framework that can't exist without its users contributing content. But if they get to a large enough level, they can start to screw the users over, because now they've got market share dominance, they've got the audience.
They've got a monopoly.
They can start to take advantage of the people that originally built their system up. But if they do that too much, there can be a problem. Same thing with Amazon. Amazon, I think a good bit of Amazon boosting its growth was allowing anybody to sell their products on Amazon. And once they increased their market share, then they started just kind of squeezing those people out. So we're seeing in these new tech-based, internet-based industries where you're using the user base to grow to a certain point, and then you realize, hey, I could make more money if I could exert more control and give the user base less. But it's a very delicate balance, depending upon the nature of your system, how much you can tweak that without causing irreparable damage. And we're seeing that with Twitter and Reddit right now.
Well, fundamentally, I'm not sure that what we're seeing is especially different than business practices that have been in play for thousands of years.
Well, technically, there's always a yin and a yang and a give and a take.
Well, it's more like
supply
establishing a
and demand.
monopoly, right? It's like Standard Oil beating out the competition by undercutting them. It's the same. It's the exact same model where
Well, there's not
Amazon,
really a monopoly
Ama-
in social media, though. If I don't want to use Facebook or Twitter, I don't have to. It doesn't affect my livelihood. But I
they
need gas
certainly
for
want
my
to.
car. I can't go from point A to point B without
But
using, you know.
but hold on. There certainly is in terms of there's a bit of a monopoly in the sense that up until recently, there was no real alternative for a Twitter style social media platform. There's no real alternative for a Facebook style social media platform. There's no real alternative for Instagram. I mean, TikTok has started to become a competitor to Facebook,
You just cited a bunch of alternatives, you know.
but are they? I don't know. I feel as though it's not as though we have 10 different Twitter competitors.
We
Right?
have, you're right, we have about 200. Now, Twitter may have market
When you say
share, and
200, what do you mean?
there's just 200 Twitter clones out there. You know, there's tons of them.
Right,
Mastodon
but
and
if they don't have the network, if they don't, but like Mastodon,
right, they don't have the
while.
market share. Don't conflate
Right.
market share with alternative stuff.
Right. So I mean, that's what I'm saying. Because there's social media networks. If you don't have the network part, it's not that useful.
But right, I
And
agree
so
with
it's
you.
not that valuable.
But it depends on your application, right? If all you want to do is talk with other turtle enthusiasts, you don't need to have 80 million people on your platform. All you need is 14 other turtle enthusiasts. And I think that's kind of what's happened with social media. There's a big growth where everybody concentrates, and then they start to split off into their little peer groups, and then they don't really need the big thing anymore. And which is a good segue into describing what's happening with Reddit right now, right? Which is Reddit became a great clearinghouse where everybody would come, and then it broke off into little subreddits about every conceivable topic, from making fun of crypto to, canning or ask me anything or any, this kind of stuff.
Turtle enthusiasm.
Turtle enthusiasm. And there's probably like 17 turtle subreddits. That's the beauty of it, is anybody could create it.
But so the real beauty, though, is also the fact that it is so widespread and everyone knows about it. It is dominated by, I think, American.
Again, how do you find other turtle enthusiasts? You have to kind of find a big ocean of people,
exactly,
and say, "Hey, turtle enthusiasts." You can't scream that into an empty room and pick up any new users. There is value.
Because I don't want just the turtle enthusiast that's next door to me. I want the turtle enthusiast that's from Australia or from Indonesia, from places all over the world. And you're only going to get that if you have a massive network that's attracting lots of people.
True. And so that is definitely the value. But once the network gets to a certain size, I think the operators of the network need to realize that they have to change the rules ever so slightly. They got to be a little bit careful. If you get too draconian, we're seeing what's happening. So let's talk about specifically what's happening with the crypto critical subreddits, which is just one example of the many different things that are happening in Reddit. Obviously, there's a subreddit called malicious compliance. Are you familiar with that one?
I am.
Okay. Malicious compliance, do you want to explain what it is?
So it's generally a subreddit where people post stuff where, they've been sort of told to do something. And they're like, okay, I'm going to follow those rules to the letter. And it ends up being, the opposite of what the person was intending. So like, I don't know, someone, says, don't leave the store until 8 under any circumstances. And then, something lights on fire outside the store. And so you're like, no, you told me not to leave the store. I'm not going to go out. I'm going to let your car burn. I'm not going to put it out. Right. So I think it's generally like that. Maybe that's not the best example, but.
Yeah, but I think people get it. The idea is if you lay down some rules while being an asshole and you really destroy your credibility and respect among your coworkers, they can follow those rules technically and make things much worse for you. And this is basically what's happening with Reddit.
The letter of the law versus the spirit of the law.
Yeah. They have, everybody turned their subreddits dark. A lot of them, like several thousand moderators, turned their subreddits dark in protest of Reddit's API policies. And Reddit said, if you continue to do this, then we're going to hold elections. And anybody who wants the subreddit, that wants to run the subreddit, we're going to let them run the subreddit, and you're going to be fired. So, so instead of turning their subreddits dark, they started having elections asking, well, what do you want to do with this? Should we continue with our normal charter of this, or should we just put pictures of John Oliver up? And a lot of the popular subreddits decided they would employ some malicious compliance. Oh, so Reddit's saying they're going to threaten us with consensus in our communities as to what to do. Well, we'll do that then. And so now you have these huge subreddits that have nothing but weird garbage content or funny memes about John Oliver. There's a subreddit called World Politics that is now showing hardcore pornography and nudity. If you go to World Politics, it's like naked people now. And so this thing is just, it's like a crazy cat and mouse game that is so entertaining. And of course, nothing pleases people in social media than comeuppance, you know?
Yeah.
Sticking it to the man. There's 100 subreddits, you know, including malicious compliance, that are just celebrate people in positions of power doing stupid things and getting kind of pwned by the average person.
Well, there's two things I want to bring up based on what you just said. The first is, can you tell that Reddit is dying specifically because you did an AMA and it's been at the top of /r/AMA for a couple of days?
Yeah, that's an interesting. So let me talk about what happened. So subreddit AMA stands for Ask Me Anything. Now this is a subreddit that has 22.5 million users. Now Buttcoin has probably got over 100,000.
200,000? Yeah, 160,000.
160,000, which is nothing to slouch at. But this has 22.5 million. It's probably the top 10 easily, maybe even the top 5 subreddits. And it's known for always having really interesting content. I mean, I think President Obama has done an AMA. Biden has done an AMA. You name it. Heads of state, dignitaries, famous celebrities. It's all just packed with, you know, really high value people doing these things where they will solicit questions from the audience and they will answer them in written form, sometimes in video form too. And the owners of the subreddit, the moderators, decided, you know what, we'll continue to moderate and we'll continue to do it, but we're going to just do the minimum now. We're just going to just barely, instead of spending all of our time talking with agents and promoters and calling people and keeping track of a schedule of famous people and going through the motions of verifying that you are who you say you are and all that kind of stuff. We're just going to run it like any regular subreddit, which is if there's a spam or there's something obviously against the rules, we'll deal with it. But other than that, we are no longer working for you guys because you showed no. And, you know, these people had special bots they had written, special websites where you could go to where you could see what was coming up.
They put in a lot of effort. I mean, it makes you wonder if some of them worked for PR firms, but there was definitely a lot of unpaid labor going on to make that subreddit what it was.
So in the wake of them announcing we're just going to run this like any other Reddit, I thought, well, here's my chance, because I normally would never have a chance to get on IMA, you know, so I just posted a submission. I created in fact, let me pull it up because I still can't get over this. So here's Ask Me Anything if you're watching the screen. 22.5 million members, right? And look at their new slogan. Where the mundane becomes fascinating and the outrageous suddenly seems normal. I think that's a new slogan. I don't know if that's what it was before, but I have the #1 AMA on this thing of 22 million people. And
congrats. Good work.
This is 2 days ago that I submitted it. So it stayed #1 for close to 3 days. I actually did it more than 48, well, probably about 48 hours ago, but I cannot believe this. So I decided to post this up there, and it immediately got locked. I messaged the moderator saying, I thought this would be okay with your new terms. And they said, oh, yeah, it is. You just use the term NFT in it, and that's a no-no in our motto.
Ah, there you
So
go.
they unlocked it, and then something else interesting happened, which is uh, thanks to Reddit kind of screwing over everybody, a good bit of our community from the crypto critical community migrated over to Discord as well as other sites. Now, it's against Reddit's rules to tell everybody to leave the site, but it's not against the rules to say, hey, we've also got a Discord and we've also got a Mastodon. Elon Musk tried that on Twitter and he got his butt handed to him when he tried to prohibit competitive sites. And Facebook kind of does some shenanigans there too, but luckily Reddit didn't. There's too many subreddits for them to police. So what happened is, we created a Discord and everybody moved over there and we were all chatting. And I said, hey, I posted this on IMA, AMA, and of course our community rallied over there and bumped it up, and it's now become the number one thing, and it's really cool. I still can't believe this has happened.
As someone in the Discord pointed out, you're still ahead of the 25-year-old woman with one fully developed breast and the porn star AMAs.
Yeah,
so
I guess
better than them.
I'm not in the best company here.
I think I should start an AMA. Like, I'm a guy in my underwear sitting at a computer. Ask me anything.
Well, there actually is a mundane AMA thing, which is just for regular stuff like that. They've had one of those for years, and that's been quite fascinating. Hey, I just had my tonsils removed. Ask me anything. And sometimes those things spawn some really, really interesting stuff. So I think when I started this, I had like 849 subscriptions on my channel. I need 1,000 to become monetized. Not that would make any money at all, but
you'd be living the life.
But
$1 a month.
Qualifying for that on YouTube makes you a little bit more findable in their algorithm. And so it would be nice to pass that hurdle. That's one of the big hurdles when you're creating a channel, is to be big enough to the point where they would actually do revenue sharing. And here's the thing: if you go to watch any of these videos, you're going to see ads no matter what. But if we have more than 1,000 subscribers, 2 cents of that will at least not go to Google. It'll go to the content creators.
Now, you just said something, which is, those videos are going to show ads no matter what. Mm-hmm. That is technically correct. However, hypothetically, people could install uBlock Origin and then watch YouTube videos without any ads.
They could do that too.
They could do that.
Yeah, but I wouldn't necessarily recommend that because if
I'm not recommending it. I'm just saying that is a possibility.
Mm-hmm. Well, I have uBlock Origin. And I see some ads on YouTube, so maybe I don't have it completely enabled or something. I don't know.
Maybe.
But anyway, so one of the things we can talk about is this AMA, which turned out to be pretty darn interesting. And I've learned a lot because I've been in my little bubble of Bitcoin and crypto reality and these other crypto critical things.
So what did you learn? What did people teach you?
Well, I kind of have always known, but when you stay surrounded in a like-minded community too long, you tend to get a little bit more arrogant and intolerant of the people that you're rebelling against and criticizing. And I definitely have less patience to deal with people that are promoting the pro-crypto side. And when you go outside of your bubble into a big community forum like AMA, you have to temper that, or they immediately go, oh man, you sound like a douche. You sound like you're biased and all this stuff. And So I caught a bunch of that. I caught a bunch of that flack. I have to pretend that I haven't heard this question 8,000 times before, which I guess that's the nature of celebrities when they go on these junkets. What made you want to be an actress? Oh, thank you, Bob. I never had that question asked of me. I mean, they have to do everything in their power to not roll their eyes and go, oh my God, I need a drink. I'm just not good at that because that's not my thing.
So you had to temper your
my attitude, my tone, the way I wrote. Okay. I had to act more ignorant in some cases.
What's the top comment? What did the person ask?
Well,
If
the
you go
top
into there.
comment, ironically, is, "Hey, have you seen this other video about crypto?" Which
Which video was that?
I don't even want to say because he's got too many damn views. And
Oh, is it
I know.
Line Goes
Don't,
Up?
there you
Line Goes
go.
Up. It's a great
It
documentary.
is a
He's
great one.
phenomenal filmmaker.
It,
Good job, Dan Olson. We appreciate you.
I even
And
said that. And I said he was one of the inspirations for my thing. He's got millions and millions of views. And when I produced my documentary, I tried to reach out to him saying, "Hey, I was inspired by your documentary. Maybe you can give a shout out to this because I do for blockchain what you did for NFTs." And crickets, didn't hear anything. And I couldn't figure out a way to reach him other than like posting comments on his YouTube, which I sometimes feel that's kind of be the worst way to try to reach out to somebody.
got to get the agent. Got to contact the agent.
But it reiterates something that's been one of my beefs, which is once you're in this influencer community, you tend to not acknowledge the lower level people. You're happy to go on somebody else's show who has more followers than you or comparable followers, but you almost don't even want to acknowledge somebody that's way down below, you know. And that kind of bugs me. There's people in the crypto critical industry that are like that too. I think CoffeeZilla is like that. He'll happily team up with Mr. Beast, or go on Joe Rogan's show.
Well, I mean, we've had this conversation before, and I wouldn't call myself an influencer in any way, shape, or form. I'm just somebody who thinks this stuff is dangerous and is critical of it. But we've talked about CoffeeZilla. I mean, he didn't start out as a crypto scam artist guy. He started out doing like science or educational videos. He was trying to
he
find
found
a
this little
niche.
trope
Like
and he's jumped into it. Yeah.
yeah, he was trying to find a way to monetize YouTube and to be a YouTube influencer.
Right.
And
Obviously, he
tried
wants to
some
be a
different
YouTube
things.
influencer, but the point I'm making is
Yeah.
not about where he came from or his content, but how once you get to a certain level, you're not really interested in bringing other people up with you.
but
And that's something that's important to me. And I'm gonna say this for the record, because if I ever do get to the point where I've got a lot of influence and somebody is an up and coming guy and I snub them, you can go, "Hey, remember when you said that? You're a hypocrite." And I hope not to be a hypocrite.
I guess the point that I'm trying to make, and that's very, very kind of you to put yourself on the record so that people can call you out on that.
I full well know if I ever get successful, this is going to come back to bite me in the ass.
But the point I'm trying to make is that it's not about whether or not you become a prominent critic or not. It's about what your goals were in the first place. In the
Right.
case of CoffeeZilla, his goals were never to necessarily
Right, it's
criticize
not
this stuff.
ideological. It's just
He
promotion.
just found, he found a niche, and he's doing good work. He is helping to expose scams that otherwise wouldn't have nearly as much exposure.
Yeah, but no, I get it.
And that's good. But that's his goal, is not to.
Well, his goal is to be an
promote
influencer. I mean, if you look at it, and we don't want to get into, I really don't want to be trashing other influencers. I think they're all great. I'm a fan of CoffeeZilla. I'm a subscriber of CoffeeZilla, despite him probably not subscribing to me. Yeah, I had to throw that in there. And I think they're all great, but some of them, they're creating a brand, they're promoting themselves more. That takes priority over the content. You don't see my face on any of these videos, and it's not because I'm not devastatingly handsome, but
he looks better than his voice, guys.
but
That's even possible.
But it's just I don't want to make it about me. I really want to make it about the information and the data. And different people have different objectives, and I totally understand that. So, yeah.
Yeah, mine is just to sell out at the earliest possible opportunity. So if there's a crypto or NFT scam that wants me to promote it, just please send me an email.
All right. So we've established Sal's going to sell out really quickly. Y'all,
so I'm a sellout.
And I'm the idealist that supposedly has principles that will probably sacrifice them later no matter what, because that's entropy, right? So
yeah, your price is just a bit higher than mine.
We're
Mine
all
is like
screwed.
$5 or $6. So so that was the first thing. So the first thing was the AMA, and the second thing, going back to this, the story that you told about where the Reddit admins went to moderators and said, "Listen, if you don't change your tone, we're going to have elections and we're going to boot you out." I think there's a fundamental question there of why is it that the same couldn't be said for the Reddit executives that made this decision? And the answer is obvious. It's a private company that's privately held. But what is needed.
Well, there could be some consensus mechanism to oust the CEO, but if
But
he,
we don't have it as a user. You don't have influence. There is a consensus mechanism to oust the CEO. There is a board. There are corporate governance policies, but these are structured
right, but
and
it's not
based
it's
on
not our decision; it's the shareholders' decision.
But yeah, because it's based on legal constructs that have no concept of users for a digital platform. So the question is why aren't there legal constructs that would afford some type of rights to users of these digital platforms? Why can't we build digital platforms that serve the interests of the users? They're clearly profitable. They can clearly monetize.
Yes.
Do they need to be necessarily be privately owned?
I think that's a really good question. And you know what? I think we're trying to get a guest on our next show, and I'm very excited about it. And this is something that we should ask him if we can get him on, because I would be very much interested in knowing what his perspective is on that. Just food for thought.
Do you want to say who the guest is?
No.
You said that, and everybody's going.
No, we're not going to say who the
guest
guest is. No, because we'll jinx it.
Okay. So there is this question, and if I mean these elections for moderators, they're invoking this democratic mechanism. Well, why don't we have democratic mechanisms for digital platforms? Why isn't there more democracy in digital platforms? And I think that's we just sort of, since the inception of networks, we went ahead and we used the constructs that we had to build these platforms. But at this point, I would argue that many of them are essentially utilities in a way and should be considered public goods. And I think there's an argument for that. I'm not saying that we should all, because they span borders. So this is a really hard question. There aren't necessarily legal constructs that span borders. Like a corporation in Canada is structured differently than the United States. You guys have public benefit corporations. We have a different legal structure. So,
and also nonprofits and different types of nonprofits and PACs and all kinds of stuff. I think you make a really good point. I do. Here's this just occurred to me as you were talking. You know, we have this concept too big to fail, right? If an entity gets too big, it becomes so important to the community that we cannot let it fail or it can cause massive destruction. There should also be another concept called too big to leave unregulated, don't you think?
Or too big to left in private hands, perhaps. I mean, if you're too big to fail, there's, I think, a fundamental question there of why should that be private then?
Right.
That should have some type of public governance, some type of accountability to the public.
Right, now, and or regulation too. Regulation can accomplish that.
Yeah, absolutely. And how you regulate digital platforms that are essentially international. Freedom of speech laws are different in the United States than in Canada, than in India, than in Australia, than in Slovakia. So how do you regulate that? I think it's a very difficult question. I don't have an answer, but I think it's a question that's worth asking and worth discussing.
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess a topic that you're working on right now is looking deeper into that and what's called the enshittification of social media and stuff like that. And we don't have to dive deep into it, but it does touch on that, right?
Yeah, that's a term Cory Doctorow coined, and he's I don't know if anyone knows him. He's an author. He works for the EFF. He's an advocate of digital rights and free speech. And he pointed out that these digital platforms, essentially, they build a network effect by almost like being a loss leader, spending a lot of money, making a really great platform, getting a lot of users, and then they build the walls, and then they squeeze it and squeeze it and squeeze it until there's nothing left, until all the value is drained out of it. Kind of like, Uber, for example. In Toronto, Uber is, I think it was like the most subsidized. Rides were more subsidized here than anywhere else. And so they're trying to get people dependent on the service, getting used to the service, building the infrastructure, making sure Uber is just the way people get around. And then they started increasing the prices. So this is what Doctorow describes as enshittification.
Right. And then the next step would be getting rid of the drivers and replacing them with robots.
Right.
Absolutely. And in social media, the same thing is trying to be done now with AI. They're trying to replace as many humans that were doing things with AI so that their expenses are lower. And I guess we all identify this as a problem. We all recognize that it's getting worse, but it's nothing new. And maybe what in a future episode we'll actually look at specific approaches to solving this problem. Maybe.
Yes. I think there are some ways to do this, or to
Yeah.
at least start investigating some avenues of
It
exploration.
wouldn't be fair to just stick that idea into this episode because it really is worthy of a lot more explanation of okay, we know these that power corrupts and things get big and they eventually start to fall apart. Are there and like I said, I want to always try to have something actionable. Are there ways? Are there models we can look at and go, okay, here's a better way of doing Facebook? And I do
Yeah,
think there are, and I think you think that too. But we're going to save that for a separate show, right?
absolutely. And the only thing I'll add is that you're absolutely correct. Where do we go is an important thing to focus on, but we also have to look at the past. We have to look at where did these democratic structures come from? How have they evolved over time? And why is it that they seem to be extremely limited?
Mm-hmm. And I guess what we can talk about, since we're like halfway into the show, we can talk about what's been happening and where people are going in some specific situations right now.
Oh yeah, yeah. Let's do that.
So, as I said, something is going on with Reddit. The As of now, I believe their API is locked up, and the number one and number two mobile apps that people use to access Reddit are no longer working. Their developers have just shut them off, I think. So now there's millions of people that are just not even on Reddit anymore. And I mean, I'd love to say that my AMA deserved to be at the number one spot, but when you look at the fact that there's 22 million members and I only have 2,200,
Yeah,
2,200
and then
upvotes.
the next one is 135.
Yeah, it's pretty obvious that there's a tremendous loss of readership here. Where do these people go? What's happening
Well,
to them?
just full disclosure, I've stopped using Reddit. I've removed it from my most viewed sites, my bookmarks. I'm not really going there unless I'm doing a search on another topic and there's some content there that's indexed and I'm reading. So I've made a conscious decision to vote with my feet because I don't really like what's happened. And that's my personal decision.
I know a lot of people like you who have done that. I've done something slightly different. I don't know if you're finished. I'll talk after you.
No, keep going. Go ahead.
I am definitely using Reddit a lot less, but I am still doing my moderator duties, but I'm doing them differently. Before, when I would say discover a spammer on the site, I would ban him from my community. I would downvote him. I would report him as spam. And I would follow that spammer into other communities and report them there. So I would help spreading the word. Sometimes when it was a scammer, I would report the scammer to Reddit proper because I knew all of that fed their algorithms and made their system work better. But
So
it took
you
up
were
time on my part.
you were doing labor which benefited the shareholders
Yeah.
of Reddit.
Substantive
Unpaid
labor, too.
Yeah.
And I have severely cut back on that. Now, I may not even ban a spammer. If their stuff's deleted, I'll just leave it deleted. I'm also finding that where in the past, if somebody did something wrong, I would explain to them what they did wrong. Try to shepherd them into being better community members. Now I just ban them or just let it go.
Yeah.
It's like, you used to pick up the lawn, the trash in the neighbor's lawn, and then the neighbor's being a jerk to you. You're like, well, stop doing that. You deal with your own trash.
It reminds me of that game theory experiment. I'm not sure if you're familiar with this one, but there's an experiment that you do, and let's say we'll conduct the experiment together. And so the person puts $1 on the table, and you go first, and you have to decide what the distribution is going to be. Are you going to split that dollar 50-50 between us? Or are you going to split it 60-40? Or are you going to try to take, 90-10? And what you find, the rational choice is that no matter the distribution that you choose, I should accept this offer, right? Because I'm better off, right? It's better for me to have that 10 cents, or let's say it's $10. It's better for me to have $1 and you to have 9 than for me to have nothing.
I guess.
So if I accept the deal, we both get the money. If I refuse, we both don't get the money. And what they find in experiments is unless that offer is close to 50-50, people almost always refuse it.
Yeah.
So if you say, hey, I'm going to take
That's
70,
kind of like
take 3,
behavioral modification.
I'm like, nah, you know what? Neither of us are going to get anything. And this is true when you think about what Reddit has done. People are willing to spend their time and effort and labor to improve the platform if they feel that the platform is also representing their interests.
Right.
If there's a fair exchange.
Mm-hmm.
However, if that's damaged, then people aren't going to do that. They're going to refuse that offer. They're going to say, you know what? I'm not going to help.
I agree. I think that's definitely an interesting way of looking at it. It makes a lot of sense.
So places that people have been going to, I really like this Trust Cafe. It's quite bare bones.
What is Trust Cafe? What is it?
It's the
what's it closest
Wikipedia. It's the Wikipedia Reddit. It's closest to Reddit.
Oh, really? It's run by the Wikipedia people?
Yeah, it's what is it? WT
WT.social?
WTS2.WT.social, or maybe just WT.social gets you there.
Look at it. WT. Well, I know that I've seen WT Social, but I didn't know if this was Wiki. Is it? This is not what you're talking about, right?
Hold on. No, go to WTS2.w here. I'll just send you the
No. Just tell me right now. It should be a short link.
WTS2.WT.social.
Oh, so it's part of WT Social?
I guess so. So I mean,
I'll have to log in.
You'd have to log in.
I'll check it out though. So we'll move on. We're not going to dig too deep into anything. So this is definitely worth looking into.
But they have branches as opposed to subreddits, and they have a feed. It's very, like I said, it's very bare bones. It needs a lot more work in terms of development. But I do like the idea that it's run by the Wikimedia Foundation, or at least is founded by them.
K-Bin Social is another one. It looks like they're down for maintenance right now. There's BHAW, right? .org or something like that. Yeah. So there's a lot of these little communities. Of course, one of the problems is when you create one of these communities, it's not simply that you want another place to go to. And I see this because there's a subreddit called Reddit Alternatives where people are always promoting their copy of Reddit. And I always ask them the same question. Everybody else is asking about features. Well, can it do this? Can it do that? And I think the most important thing is, who are you? What's your guiding principle in operating this thing? And how can you assure us you're not going to eventually turn evil too? That to me is what we should be asking. Not, oh my God, can I use avatars? Can I, embed video?
So speaking of in terms of alternatives, let's talk about Twitter for just 1 second. There's a lot of people are going to Blue Sky, but for me, I'm looking at Blue Sky and going, that's the same thing.
Isn't that the guy from Twitter's thing?
It's another privately held social media company.
Exactly.
So what's the point? And then, okay, there's Mastodon, but Mastodon is federated, and that there's problems with federation. I mean, Moxie Marlinspike wrote a great article about this. I can't remember what it's called. Maybe we can put it in the description. But he talked about how it's much more difficult at the application layer to innovate and to iterate if your platform is federated as opposed to centralized. It's much easier to build a better product if it's centralized. You can go to market faster. You can add features faster. It's just a much better way of building projects. So my issue with Mastodon is that it's federated. There's a clear missing alternative. There's something that's missing, and that is a Twitter-like social media platform that is centralized.
Well, keep in mind,
but is publicly governed, that is not controlled by a private entity. That doesn't exist currently.
I understand what you're saying. I also think, though, that Mastodon and these federated sites have the potential to evolve into what it is you're saying. Because if you think about it, Obviously, if the network is federated into all of these autonomous servers that can or cannot choose to deal with each other, you start off highly decentralized. And I've already run into this with Mastodon, right? I first created an account on a Mastodon server that was supposed to be for artists and creative types and offer a lot of freedom of expression. But it turns out the guy that's running that server was a crypto bro, and he just locked my account and didn't give me any explanation, and I got screwed, right? So I eventually migrated over to various other servers, and I just found it was very clunky, except the master server, mastodon.social, is the one run by the developer. And I said, well, that's the one I'm going to go to. And I think what's beautiful about this federated model is it allows you to grow into that centralized governed thing in an organic way that is economically practical, because that's one of the problems is you can't launch a central site that can handle any reasonable amount of users without having venture capital funds, and it's hard to do that without selling your soul.
Yeah, that's an interesting case, because the bootstrap problem is a big problem. So you know that this stuff can be self-funding once you build a network and once you get it up and running. But to bootstrap it, to have that capital investment, and it's a large capital investment to build a web scale platform.
Well, imagine this.
How do you do that?
Look at the Reddit problem. Okay, Reddit managed. They managed this overarching framework that allowed other people to create and build their own communities. So they created and they built these communities, and then Reddit pulled the plug on them, and they didn't have any alternative. They couldn't pull the AMA or the Pix or the other subreddit from the framework and operate it autonomously. But if it were a federated system that was coordinated all together, they could. You know what I mean? There's nobody that could tell them, all right, we're pulling the plug, we're changing the rules. And I think that's what's so cool about Mastodon and the federated model. Yes, it starts out chaotic, but we've seen by looking at the history of the internet, this is what happens. It starts out very decentralized and very distributed, and then people just eventually start to collect in little enclaves. And I would rather those enclaves be individual people running individual servers that can scale those servers up to enterprise level slowly over time without having to sell their souls.
Well, you still run into the problem of private ownership, but I understand
what you could choose a federated server that's run by a nonprofit or a benefit corporation.
And a few people could get together and say, hey, we have the 3 biggest servers, we're going to merge them and we're going to govern them with this common governance framework, and here it is. And we're going to run this as a public utility as opposed to something to enrich ourselves.
Yeah, and I think Wikipedia is a beautiful model for a public service utility type thing that really has continued to work well into the 21st century. But I think if that started as a grassroots thing that slowly grew, and it mainly worked because it filled a niche. It was around before any of the other encyclopedias or dictionaries discovered the internet.
Yeah, they are dependent on donations.
Yeah.
So
they are dependent on donations, but they could never launch something that scale from the ground up right now as a nonprofit. It would be really, really hard to do.
Yeah.
So to me, this federated model works quite well. It's certainly got plenty of problems. There's no doubt, but I think it could be the solution. I really do. I really don't like Mastodon's look and feel. I don't like its ergonomics. Its UI is clunky.
It's very clunky.
But I mean, you look at the early versions of WordPress. They were very clunky too, and now you can change the look and feel all over the place with plugins. I could see that happening with Mastodon very easily, and this type of project that allows so many different creative people to do their own thing, and most importantly, no corporation that can shut them down. WordPress is got an amazing developer network now, and the company itself can't really do much to fuck with that.
Yeah, I mean, I'll take your word for it.
So a lot of interesting things, a lot of food for thought. So basically what we're doing right now is we're focusing a lot of our energy on our Discord. We have a Discord if you want to find out. I don't know if we've got the link up at IO Radio. Maybe we can do that. But it is up on our Buttcoin, and elsewhere. You know what? I should just put it up. Let me pull up um, Reddit.com.
For the two listeners who aren't on the Discord but listen to this podcast,
So if you,
this is
yeah, if you scroll, it doesn't show up on the. Oh, there it is, right there. This is it. It's under the about. So there is the Discord link right there. If you type that in, you'll go to our Discord and join us there. It's becoming quite a vibrant community. We've got a lot of interesting people and some I think celebrities that are on there. So it's
celebrities.
well,
Yes,
pseudo celebrities
in the crypto critical community.
Hey,
We definitely have some smart people in there.
You gotta
Some good commentary.
yeah. So anyway, it's there's the Discord right there, and you can join us. We've created crypto critical communities on some of the federated social media sites like KBin and BHaw and
I requested a Buttcoin branch on Trust Cafe. I don't know if it's been approved yet.
Okay, cool. But see, there's a problem right there. Does it require approval?
Yes.
Reddit. That's one nice thing about Reddit was anybody could create a subreddit. Now they could take it away from you after the fact, but you could at least create it and try to build a community, which I thought was neat. There are some, like KBin, you can create it where you don't need approval. Some of them you do.
Yeah.
So then there's the Twitter situation. Why stick around on Twitter? I never really socialize much on Twitter. I just find it to be mostly garbage. But I will use it as a PR newswire. You know, I'll try to drive people to the Discord. I'll try to call attention to my Reddit AMA, that kind of stuff. That's about as much as I use it for. Same thing with Facebook. I just stopped fiddling around on Facebook.
I don't bother.
Facebook is an interesting thing because they have systematically screwed their customer base over for decades, but they've done it so slow. You know, like that. I know it's not accurate, but the frog in the heated pot of water.
Yeah.
They've done it so slow that people don't realize how they're being manipulated. The little subtle ways in which they engage in behavioral modification, where if like you post something they don't like, they will restrict your posting for a certain amount of time or in a certain amount of area. Like I found on certain groups, I can't attach images. And it doesn't tell me you did something wrong, but I've triggered some kind of behavioral modification and now it won't let me do that. You know, it's frustrating because like I'll see ads scroll across my Facebook feed for things that are clearly scams. There's one out there right now for this keyboard that's a sampling keyboard, and it's a keyboard called Chompy. But Chompy is a Kickstarter project, and there's nonstop Facebook ads selling this thing for $29.95. And it's like a $500 or $800 thing if you signed up in the Kickstarter. They're not even shipping them yet, right? And you know, I keep reporting and I'll comment, this is a scam. So what happens is the scammer...
Isn't also trademark infringement?
They don't say Chompy. They use a different name, but they use they actually use the promotional video, but remove any reference to the name. So it's actually the promotional video for Chompy. And... but what happens is, and this is a great example of how their algorithm fails, the spammer itself will flag my comments as spam. And then I get put in the behavioral modification jail if I can't make comments on things.
Yeah.
Even though I'm trying to tell people, hey, watch out, don't give these guys your credit card.
Well, money talks, bullshit walks. And if they're paying Facebook to be able to run that scam, guess who's going to be listened to first?
Yeah, and I swear I have seen at least 5 or 10 different ads that all seem to use the same YouTube video. So they're just they'll take the money as long as they can and pretend it's a shame.
I just generally don't want to help any billionaires. Fuck them.
Yeah.
I don't want to contribute to their platforms. I don't want to make them make any more money. So I'm not going to touch anything from Meta, the people who tried to sell us on the metaverse.
Right.
That goes to show just how deserving they are of their billions of dollars. Zuckerberg is such a genius, just like Musk. These people don't need any help from anyone. So,
But
leave
Facebook
their
could
platforms.
could be a little bit better. They could just show you content from your friends without metering it in some kind of arcane way that makes no sense.
What matters to those people are making billions of dollars.
Right.
They don't care if social media causes an increase in depression in youth. They don't care if it causes hate speech to spread. They only care insofar as it affects the bottom line.
Well, that's corporations in general. And that's why government
Corporations in
exists.
general. Yes.
One of government's main charter is to protect the interests of the people, and one of the biggest infringers on the interests of the people are corporations, because all they care about is making money. And if they can screw people over, mislead them, exploit them to increase their bottom line, they will.
Well, the history of corporations is fascinating, and it's definitely a structure that's been manipulated over time to turn them into these sort of psychopathic, immortal entities.
Absolutely.
They weren't always that way. But if people a few hundred years ago, if they could come to today, if the founding fathers could come to today and see what's happened with corporate law, they would certainly be horrified.
This, by the way, people, is well worth watching if you have not seen.
Enlisted is the free brand new online world.
Yep, there's my. I'm running this in a.
Sorry, can we just pause this for 1 second?
Sure.
Sorry, I'll be right back.
Oops. Well, so I'm going to skip this, but for people watching, I'm a little taste of it.
150 years ago, the business corporation was a relatively insignificant institution. Today, it is all pervasive. Like the church, the monarchy, and the Communist Party in other times and places, the corporation is today's dominant institution. This documentary examines the nature, evolution, impacts, and possible futures of the modern business corporation. Initially given a narrow legal mandate, what has allowed today's corporation to achieve such extraordinary power and influence over our lives? We begin our inquiry as scandals threaten to trigger a wide debate about the lack of public control over big corporations.
I do think there is an overhang.
I'm going to keep this on until Sal comes back.
Of distrust. Listen, 95% or some percentage, huge percentage of the business community are honest and reveal all their assets. And got compensation programs that are balanced, but there are some bad acts.
The media debate about the basic operating principles of the corporate world was quickly reduced to a game of follow the leader.
I still happen to think the United States is the greatest place in the world to invest. We have some shakeups that are going on because of a few bad apples.
So this is during Enron and all that other stuff.
Well, I may be bruised, but I still taste sweet. Some people call me a bad.
So on the screen for people just listening, it's just, lots of visualizations of
these are not
crooked
just
companies.
a bunch of bad apples.
This is just a few bad apples.
It's not just a few bad apples.
We've got to get rid of the bad apples. You can start with Tyco.
Bad apples.
We know all about WorldCom.
Bad apples.
Xerox Corporation.
Bad apples.
Arthur Anderson.
Bad apples.
Enron, obviously.
Bad apples.
Kmart Corporation.
The fruit cart is getting a little more full.
I don't think it's just a few apples, unfortunately. I think this is the worst crisis of confidence in business.
What's wrong with this picture? Can't we pick a better metaphor to describe the dominant institution of our time? Through the voices of CEOs, whistleblowers, brokers, gurus and spies, insiders and outsiders, we present the corporation as a paradox, an institution that creates great wealth but causes enormous and often hidden harms.
So this documentary was made more than a decade ago, and the atrocities that corporations have committed since then.
I see the corporation as part
of a
jigsaw in society as a whole, which if you
Which one is
remove
this?
it,
Is this the corporation?
the picture's
Yes, I was
incomplete. But equally, if it's the only part, it's...
So, yeah, if you have not seen this documentary, it is absolutely worth watching. And it just basically talks about the structure of corporations and how they are designed by default. And It's really should be essential watching for everybody, I think.
Nice. I would agree with you.
Yeah, we can leave on that note. Yeah. So, food for thought. In a future episode, we're going to talk about particular ways of solving some of the problems that we've seen that are basically created by corporations. Can we use other social structures and political structures and technological structures to come up with better ways of doing things? We'll talk about that. And if you think you've got some ideas, leave them in the comments. We would absolutely love to hear them.
Yeah, or if you have links to articles or things you think we missed that maybe we should be talking about, please let us know.
And I guess until next time, thanks everybody for watching. And be sure to subscribe and participate and think critically.
Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.